Love Next Door, Heart with You, a Thai novel. Synopsis. The handsome and charming guy next door is not only good-looking but also has a mesmerizing voice as a singer. How could Lynn not give her whole heart to him? But how can she make him realize her feelings, which she has held on to for the past 10 years, ever since high school? Even though their houses are so close, he never seems to look her way. Sigh. Chapter 1. It's late. Today, there's an important client meeting. She'd stayed up late comforting her next-door neighbor, who was heartbroken after his girlfriend of less than a month dumped him and got engaged to someone else. She had to stay up till dawn as his field medic to support him through the pain, only returning home at the break of dawn. A ringing doorbell late in the morning jolted Thunva awake, forcing him to check who was at the door. His dad had gone to a seminar in another province, and his mom had accompanied him. Thun. A young woman in a short denim overall with wavy short hair smiled at him, showing off her braces while holding a bag of breakfast. Come in, Lynn. She followed his broad back as he entered the house wearing only a loose t-shirt that showed off his muscular build and his favorite football shorts, scratching his messy hair. How could someone look this good first thing in the morning? After narrowly making it to her client meeting on time and having everything go smoothly, she decided to bring some food for Thunva on her way back, since he'd been drinking heavily the night before. Go take a shower, it's already late, Lynn immediately warned as she saw Thunva about to lie down on the sofa. He, too lazy to argue, obediently followed her advice. After showering, Thunva sat down to eat the breakfast Lynn had prepared for him. Pork congee, his favorite, and some green drink? Go to cola juice. It's good for healing bruises, she said with a bright smile. If you're here to rub it in, you can go home now. What? Thun, don't be such a grump over a little teasing, she chuckled, earning a light flick on her forehead from him. If you have so much free time, Lynn, go find yourself a boyfriend instead of bothering me. No way. It's way more fun hanging out with you. She stuck her tongue out playfully and quickly dashed into the living room before he could flick her forehead again. How could she have a boyfriend when she's already got her heart set on him? Even after opening her heart to others, no one could make her heart race like he did. She'd rather stay single. Oh, Thun, someone sent you something. Lynn took a brown envelope out of her bag and handed it to him. Open it, Thunva said as he was busy eating. A wedding invitation. Lynn looked at Thunva with concern. Who sent you that? He asked, noticing her silence, but she didn't respond. Seeing her worried look, he took it from her hands to see for himself. He fell silent, holding the card in his hands, showing no expression. Lynn placed her hand on his shoulder, which was trembling. Seeing how deeply hurt Thunva was, Lynn's own heart ached just as much. His tears seemed like a painful reminder that she could never replace the spot his ex held in his heart. She could only hope that one day, he might see the girl next door in a new light. Thun. Her small hand gently patted his broad shoulder to comfort him. What did I do wrong, Lynn? Why did Ploy choose that guy after 3 years together? Lynn didn't know what to say. During their time together, he and Ploy seemed truly in love. But last month, out of the blue, Ploy had called to end things without any warning. You were always good to her, Thun. Give yourself a chance to love someone else. It wasn't his fault. It was Ploy's cruelty for leaving him for her father's friend's son just because her family disapproved of Thunva. I don't think I can love anyone else but Ploy. Thunva's words felt like a knife cutting into Lynn's old wounds. Hearing her sniffles from behind him, he turned around to see her cheeks glistening with tears. Hey, feeling that sorry for me? Stop crying, you crybaby. He chuckled as he wiped away her tears, unaware that he himself was the cause of her tears. Can't it be me? She whimpered. What? She clenched her little fist and softly pounded his chest. Can't it be me, the one you love, Thun? You mean? Lynn liked you even before Ploy. Haven't you ever noticed that this little sister of yours cares about you? Why can't you see me? Lynn, Please don't turn me down just yet. Let me try to win your heart first. But I might end up hurting you. I'm the one making the choice, Thun. Can't I? Thunva looked into her tear-streaked face, feeling sympathy for her vulnerability, and swallowed his initial refusal. A smile broke out across Lynn's face as Thunva nodded. Really? Thunva watched as Lynn gleefully hopped around the room, and he couldn't help but chuckle at her playful antics. You're overdoing it, he teased. Can I come to see you sing at the bar tonight? Do you want to come with me? I'll come later. I'll stop by to pick up Fern first. Lynn grinned, thinking of her best friend from high school, who knew all her secrets, including her longtime crush on Thunva. Fern had to listen to Lynn's endless stories about Thunva every morning and evening. Just imagining her reaction when Lynn told her about tonight was enough to make Lynn laugh. Chapter 2. Sitting there drooling over him like that. Might as well be pregnant already. Your mouth, Fern. Can't I just be happy? At least now, Lynn could openly show her feelings without having to hide them like before. Dressed like this at a bar? I thought I was here with a high school kid. She was wearing her usual cream-colored short overalls, just like any other day. Hey, look over there. Fern pointed to the stage, where a woman in a sexy tight dress was handing a drink wrapped in money to Thunva. Oh, she's giving him 1,000 baht note. Lynn couldn't help but cover her face in embarrassment at her friend's sheer naivety. So innocent that she even thought a water bottle was a big deal. I meant, look at that woman, Lynn. How do you think Thun would notice you if you look like this? Guys like him want someone bold and beautiful like her. She was right. Ploy, his ex-girlfriend, had been a former university beauty queen. And Lynn? She didn't even come close. May I have a toast with you? Always popular, her friend was quickly swept away by a new admirer, leaving Lynn alone at their table. Are you here alone, Lynn? Oh. Hi, May. No, I came with a friend, but she got whisked away by a guy. Come sit with us at the musicians' table. May guided Lynn over to a reserved table for the musicians, then excused herself to join her friends on stage as she was the guest singer for the night. If I hadn't met her yesterday while watching over Thun, I'd probably be sitting alone at my table right now. Is my cute little Lynn here tonight? After their set ended, the musicians took a break since they didn't have any other gigs tonight. Lynn had checked Thunva's schedule beforehand, so she knew. Is she your girlfriend, Job? Win teased. Just kidding, Win. Not like her guy over there is worried. Job replied, glancing over at Thunva, who was busy exchanging contact info with a beautiful woman by the stage. It hurt. No matter how many times she'd seen him with others, she just couldn't get used to it. Lynn asked herself quietly, would this pain ever fade? Chapter 3. Lynn, come down for breakfast. Her mother's voice stirred Lynn out of bed, where she had been hiding under the covers. Since confessing her feelings to Thunva, she'd spent every night for the past week watching over him at the bar until late. He worked at night, and she didn't know when else she'd have the chance to follow him around and try to win his attention. Oh my goodness! Her mother, Nappa, gasped upon seeing her daughter's dark, panda-like circles under her eyes and her frizzy, unkempt hair. Working all day and watching over a man all evening. Seems like her daughter really took after her. Mom, do you think I look ugly? Lynn asked with a tired voice. Lynn, honey, you're the cutest to me. But I think you need to manage your time better, dear. If things kept going like this, her daughter would turn into a zombie. What do you mean, Mom? Lynn looked at her mother with a hint of curiosity. Seeing her daughter's over-the-top dedication, Nappa suggested that Lynn should try a new approach, something that wouldn't drain her energy. As for visiting him at the bar, she decided she'd have to cut down on those late nights. Besides singing, Thunva also had a fondness for sweets. Lynn made a decision and asked her mom to arrange a meeting with her friend, who ran a bakery cafe across the street from their neighborhood. Lynn pushed open the white wooden door of the cozy cafe, decorated with an array of houseplants, giving it a warm and inviting atmosphere. The smell of freshly roasted coffee mixed with various baked goods filled the air, making her take a deep breath in delight. Welcome to Bunny Cafe. A cheerful staff member greeted her with a sweet smile. I have an appointment with Kun Fat, Lynn replied, glancing around the cafe. You must be Kun Lin. Please follow me. The staff member gestured and led her to a private room inside. The cafe's warm ambience brought back memories of her last visit late last year. Back then, there had been a small garden with bunnies in the back. There it was, a fluffy white bunny just outside the glass window. Lynn tiptoed closer trying to catch the bunny, but the little fluff ball dashed away, causing her to nearly trip over. You naughty thing. Keep it up, and I'll turn you into roast bunny. Looks like it's the end of the line for you, Fluffy, a voice said from behind her. I was just kidding. I wouldn't really do it. Lynn gasped, quickly clarifying in a soft voice when she noticed a pair of black slacks and sneakers approaching her. Distracted by the bunny chase, She had lost sight of the staff member who'd been leading her and instead found a handsome young man standing behind her. "Anything I can help you with?" the man asked, noticing her looking around. "I lost my way with the staff who was supposed to take me to the cake class," she replied softly. "So, you're the one Aunt Napa mentioned. Ah, so he knew her mother. Could it be Fat?" Lynn suddenly realized. That morning, Aunt Ket had called to let her know her son would be teaching the class, as she had another commitment. "Nice to meet you, Lynn. Let's head inside where it's cooler," Fat said with a gentle smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Chapter 4. An hour had passed, and Lynn's attempt at mixing the cake batter had been nothing short of a disaster. What she had intended to proudly present to Thunva now seemed destined for the trash instead. "Lynn, it looks a bit strange," she admitted with a wry smile. "Try tasting it first, it might taste good," Fat encouraged her. But as soon as they each took a bite, they both spat it out immediately. "Here, try this piece." Fat offered her a piece of the cake he'd made himself. Lynn's eyes sparkled with delight. She had followed his instructions to the letter, so why did hers turn out so differently? Realizing she might not have a talent for baking after all, she figured she might as well stick to graphic design. A sense of defeat crept over her. How about trying cookies instead? Fat's suggestion lifted her spirits immediately. Thunva loved cookies. This time, Lynn gave her best effort, so much so that her focused determination made Fat smile. For nearly an hour, Lynn kept glancing between her work screen and the door, wondering when Thunva would finally come home. She'd tried working, then played a game to pass the time, but it seemed she'd have to wait until tomorrow because her eyes were starting to close. Asterisk. When are you going to bed? I'm so sleepy. Asterisk Fern's message popped up on the chat. Asterisk. Keep me company for a bit longer, Fern. Thun will be back any minute now. Asterisk. Apart from her best friend, there was no one else she could bother at this hour. Asterisk. If you can wait for him this long, why not just go to the bar to see him? Asterisk. Asterisk there. I can hear his bike. Asterisk. Asterisk. Are you a person or a dog, recognizing the sound of his bike like that? Asterisk. Asterisk. I'm going to see Thun now. Talk later. Asterisk. Lynn quickly ended the chat to run downstairs with the cookies as Thunva turned off his motorcycle by the fence. She'd have had a comeback ready for Fern's teasing if she hadn't been in a rush. Still awake, huh? I learned how to make cookies today and wanted Thun to try them. I'll eat the whole box. Now go to bed. Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams. Ah. Thun wished her sweet dreams. Tonight, she wanted to sleep forever and never wake up. Chapter 5. The next day. Late in the morning, Lynn had to meet a client for a design project. Such was the life of a freelancer. She had to take on any work that came her way. She grabbed her keys, locked up, and set off to meet her client at Bunny Cafe as planned. Out of habit, she glanced toward the neighboring house. There's Thun. Where's he rushing off to? Usually, he doesn't wake up until noon. Before she could call out to him, he was already gone. Thank you so much, Kunlada, for considering me. I'll get started on the design and send it over for your review, Lynn said, wrapping up her meeting with her client. With her previous work done, she was free for the rest of the day. Sweetie, pick anything you'd like to eat. Wait, that voice sounds familiar. Thun. Sitting close to the counter, Lynn clearly saw Thunva, dressed in a casual white t-shirt and jeans with his hair tied back in a loose ponytail. And he wasn't alone. He had a little girl with him. Hello. My name's Nuna. I'm Uncle Thun's niece. Mom is his sister. The girl introduced herself with a big smile, her wide eyes gleaming with curiosity and her cheeks flushed. My name is Lynn. Did you come here with your boyfriend? Thunva teased. Do you see one? She replied, trying to sound casual. How could she have time for a boyfriend when she was only interested in him? Nuna, would you like to try making a cake? They offer classes here, Lynn suggested, immediately trying to bond with the little girl. Really? Nuna's sparkling eyes made it impossible for Thunva to say no. Watching Thunva help his niece mix the cake batter, smudging flour on his handsome face, Lynn couldn't resist snapping a photo of him. When he realized she had taken his picture, he smeared flour on both her cheeks in retaliation. Now I'm all messy, Thun. Nuna, tell your uncle to stop teasing me. You were the one who sneakily took a picture of me with flour on my face. Thunva laughed and gave her a playful nudge on the forehead. What now? He asked, raising an eyebrow as she put on a pair of cat ears. It's a prop for the couple's special promotion. What kind of ridiculous couple promotion is this? I'm not wearing those. Nuna and I are both wearing them, right? Thunva, seeing the two girls giggling and holding hands, couldn't resist getting his revenge. A cat needs whiskers too. He dabbed whipped cream on both sides of her cheeks. When she tried to get back at him, he lifted the bowl out of her reach. Hee hee. Nuna's laughter made them stop their playful argument. You look just like my mom and dad when they tease each other. Nuna showed them a photo she'd taken, making them freeze in surprise. Do we really look like a couple? Just the thought made Lynn blush, so she excused herself to the restroom to calm down. As she returned to her table, Lynn caught sight of Thunva's ex-girlfriend and her fiancé. She quickly hurried back to the table, concerned for him. I really want you to come, Thun, were Ploy's parting words to him, echoing in his mind as she left with her fiancé. If this had been right after they broke up, it wouldn't have been so easy for them to walk away like that. Lynn watched Thunva leave the cafe, leaving his niece in her care and asking her to take Nuna home. He didn't want Nuna riding with him in his current emotional state. Let's head home. Uncle Thun had an urgent matter to attend to. Nuna nodded in understanding, not the least bit upset. Being a smart kid, she'd understood the situation well. Back home, Lynn played with Nuna, waiting for Thunva to return, but as night fell, there was still no sign of him. Nuna, come eat, and you too, Lynn, Nonglak called. Yes, Grandma, Nuna replied. I'll head home now, Aunt Nong. Thank you. Lynn excused herself, worried about Thunva. She'd tried calling and messaging him, but he hadn't responded. Realizing he might not come back tonight, she decided to wait at her own house instead. Lying on her bed, she kept checking her phone for a message or call from Thunva, but there was nothing. Was he singing at the bar tonight? The bar. Realizing this, Lynn jumped out of bed, grabbed her car keys, and got ready to drive to the bar where Thunva's band frequently performed. Traying. Her phone rang. Thanwa calling. Where are you right now? Why didn't you answer my calls? I was so worried. This is Seth, Thunva's friend, came a voice from the other end. How is Thun? Lynn asked, recognizing Seth, one of Thunva's bandmates. She'd gotten to know the band members during her frequent visits, and they all knew she was trying to win Thunva's heart. When Seth sent her the location, Lynn immediately got in her car and drove to meet them. Chapter 6. At UD Place. What happened to you? Lynn looked at Thunva slumped over the table, clutching a bottle of alcohol. He's been drinking since noon. No surprise he's drunk, Job, who was sitting next to Thunva, remarked. Are you guys not playing at the bar tonight? She asked, noticing that almost the entire band was gathered, except for May and Win, the guitarist. Tonight's special. We cancelled the full set for our dear heartbroken friend here, Ball, the band's keyboardist, said as he poured everyone another round. Then I'll take Thun home, Lynn offered, seeing that most of them were already tipsy. The only one with any semblance of sobriety was Seth. Thun, let's go home, she said, gently shaking his shoulder. Don't touch me, I'm trying to sleep, he muttered, making Lynn sigh heavily. She tried to help him up, but being smaller, she almost stumbled under his weight. Luckily, Seth was there to steady her. By the time they reached her car downstairs, both were out of breath. Why did Ploy have to hurt me like this? Thunva's slurred words made both Lynn and Seth turn to look at him as he slouched in the passenger seat. Hearing that, Lynn smacked him lightly across the face. Here she was, going out of her way to help him, and all he could think about was the one who'd left him. Seth could only stand in silent shock. Who hit me? Thunva groggily opened his eyes, blinking at Lynn, who was standing there with her arms crossed. Lynn? Is that you? You're so cruel, Thun. Just watch. I'm going to stop liking you and find myself a real boyfriend. No, you won't. Stay put, she ordered, pointing her finger at him when he tried to undo his seatbelt. She was frustrated and hurt. She'd been giving everything, yet he hadn't thought of her at all. Hearing him call out Ploy's name felt like a knife to her heart. Lynn waved goodbye to Seth and got into the car, driving away. You keep saying she's like a sister, but do you even realize how possessive you are over her? Seth chuckled to himself, feeling smug. He'd once bet with the band that Thunva the predator would eventually fall for Lin, his prey. And it looked like he might just win that bet. Answer me, Lin. Thunva's stubbornness only intensified with alcohol, as he kept talking until Lin sighed in exasperation. What are you doing? She yelled when Thunva rolled down the window and leaned his head outside. Worried, Lin pulled over and reached over to bring him back into the car. You wouldn't talk to me. You're too drunk, Thun. Let's just go home. Is it that cake shop guy you said you'd move on to? He muttered, his jealousy flaring up. He'd bought cake for his niece once and happened to see Lin and that guy laughing together. Just thinking about it irritated him. What nonsense are you talking about? You're trying to win me over. Why are you messing with someone else? Ouch! Lin winced as Thunva tightened his grip on her shoulders, shaking her slightly. Don't like anyone else but me. Hick. You're so selfish, Thun. The frustration and heartbreak she'd been holding back poured out as she began to cry. If he didn't like her, why keep her around? Lin, even if I like you, you have no right to stop me from seeing someone else. I'll just... Suddenly, Thunva leaned in and kissed her, cutting her off mid-sentence. Please don't say you don't like me. Wait, what? Don't like anyone else but me. His gaze was intense and unfamiliar, his face drawing so close that Lin could feel the pounding of her heart, loud and strong. Thud. Thunva slumped forward, passing out from the alcohol. Lin looked at his sleeping form and let out a relieved sigh. A drunk Thunva was dangerous, especially to her heart. Chapter 7. The next morning. Lin rolled around on her bed, unable to sleep after taking Thunva back home. She couldn't stop herself from thinking that maybe, just maybe, Thunva had feelings for her too. She wanted to hear it directly from him, but throughout the day, she avoided him out of embarrassment after he had stolen her first kiss the night before. Lin, help me. A short message from her best friend made Lin jump out of bed. She immediately called back, but there was no answer, which only made her more anxious. Mom, I'm going to Fern's place. Lin called out to her mother, grabbed her car keys, and rushed out. Thunva, who was taking out the trash, noticed Lin's hurried expression and couldn't help but ask, Where are you off to this early? Thun. Even though she felt awkward seeing him so soon after he'd kissed her, she tried to stay composed. She was curious if he remembered what had happened last night. I'm going to see a friend. She's in a bit of trouble, Lin replied. I'll go with you, Thunva said before she could refuse, already waiting by the car and taking the driver's seat. Lin stole a glance at him, noticing how normal he seemed, which made her heart sink. Do you remember anything about yesterday? She asked, watching his expression as if he was trying to recall something but couldn't. Lin smiled to herself. He probably said it because he was drunk. Forget about it, she muttered just as they arrived at her friend's condo. Lin quickly got out, trying to put some distance between them, but he grabbed her wrist. You know I don't like that guy, so don't hang out with him too much, Thunva said, walking ahead. Lin watched him, her heart swelling with hope again. Thun, do you like me? He didn't respond but flicked her forehead lightly. Lin's face broke into a big smile, showing off her braces, forgetting her friend's problem momentarily. Just then, Fern came running out, crying. Can I stay with you? Last night, someone kept knocking on my door all night, she sobbed. Of course. Are you hurt at all? Lin checked her friend over with concern. As Lin loaded Fern's bag into the car, she paused and turned to Thunva. Does someone like you really like someone like me? Chapter 8. Plin. A voice called out from outside the window in the late morning, prompting Lin to look out and see Thunva standing by the fence, holding Nuna, who was waving enthusiastically. So, are you guys together now? Fern asked with a smirk, teasing her friend. Oh, stop it. It's just like I told you, Lin said, blushing as she recalled her story. She then gathered her art supplies and headed downstairs, as she'd planned to give Nuna an art lesson at her house today. Fern followed and sat beside Thunva. Plin, can we go to that cake shop after drawing? Nuna likes it there, the little girl asked sweetly. Nope. Lin opened her mouth to answer, but Thunva cut her off. Hey, Nuna didn't invite you, Nuna retorted, leaving Thunva at a loss for words. Both Lin and Nuna giggled as he folded his arms and turned away, pouting. Grumpy old man. What are you girls up to? A voice from the gate made both of them turn to see who was speaking. Fat! / Uncle Fat! Lynn and Noona exclaimed in unison. What are you doing here? Thunva asked curtly. I ran into your mom in the alley. She told me you brought Noona over here for an art lesson, Fat replied casually. Lynn watched as Noona ran over to hug Fat's waist. He was the cafe owner who'd taught her how to make cookies for Thunva. She couldn't help but wonder, how do they know each other? Can't an old friend stop by? Fat asked, his tone teasing. Today was full of surprises for Lynn. Not only did her mom know Fat's mother, but Fat and Thunva were old friends. Trying to recall her memories, Lynn vaguely remembered that Thunva had a friend named Fat, who used to visit frequently when they were younger. In high school, they'd been very close. She often heard Thunva mention Fat's name. But over the years, Thunva hadn't talked about him, and judging from the chilly greeting today, it seemed their relationship had soured. Since I knew I was coming here, I brought some treats, Fat said, smiling and holding out a bag of snacks. I'll put them on a plate, Noona exclaimed, eyes shining as she rushed to put the cookies on a dish. Here they are, she said, returning quickly with the plate. Knowing Thunva's fondness for cookies, Lynn instinctively offered him one. I'm not eating. But you love cookies, don't you? Thunva turned his head away and got up from the table, heading back to his house. Lynn watched him go, puzzled. Lynn, I'm going to head home and get some sleep. Didn't get much last night, Fern said, standing to leave. Lynn nodded. Plin, you can go check on Uncle Thun. I'll be fine here, Noona said with a hint of concern in her voice. Check on him? It's not like we're anything special to each other. Some things never change, Fat murmured to himself. What did you say, Fat? She asked, not quite hearing him. I'll stay here with Noona. You go check on Mr. Stubborn, Fat said, smiling. Lynn, knowing who he was referring to, walked over to Thunva's house. She didn't find him downstairs, so she assumed he was in his room. Today, Thunva's mom wasn't home, as she was out socializing with Lynn's mother and some neighbors, while his dad was at work. Chapter 9. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, so Lynn made her way toward Thunva's room, the room she used to visit often back when they were students. Wait. He's not alone. A woman. Lynn froze, speechless, as tears began to stream down her face. The person she had secretly loved for so long was on the bed, entangled with her best friend. Pain. That was the only feeling Lynn could process in that moment. A pain far worse than unrequited love. Betrayal. Lynn. Thunva pushed the woman away and hurried out of the room toward Lynn, who was standing there, crying. Lynn shook his hand off. How could you do this? She's my friend, for God's sake. At least now you know the truth. I can stop pretending. Lynn turned to Fern, who was putting her shirt back on and stepping down from the bed to stand right in front of her. What does she mean? Let me tell you something, Lynn. Your beloved Thun and I have been together since our freshman year. That was before he even started dating Ploy. Fern, enough. Thunva tried to stop her, but Fern only stared at Lynn, continuing to speak. At first, I wasn't interested. But then you kept talking about him so much that I got curious. Freshman orientation night? We got to know each other really well, she sneered. Slap. Fern's face whipped to the side from Lynn's stinging blow. I thought you were my friend. I loved you, trusted you. How could you do this to me? Wake up, Lynn. Did you really think someone like Thunva would ever actually like you? Look at yourself. You're plain and boring. Fern spat, pointing at her. Let me give you some free advice. Aside from his ex-ploy, no one has held a place in his heart like this. And as for why he kept you away from his old friend, that was just to prove a point, nothing more. Lynn was speechless, unable to respond, her only outlet being the tears that continued to fall. Get out, Thunva said, pushing Fern away from both of them. Don't touch me. Fern snapped, shaking off his hand and storming out of the room, leaving only Lynn and Thunva in a silence broken by her quiet sobs. Chapter 10. Ding. Lynn watched the video clip Fern had just sent her. Your little friend is actually trying to get with you? All right, here's my bet. I say the tiger will end up falling for his prey. I'm Thunva, and I'm all in that it'll never happen. Hick. It's not true, is it? Lynn whispered, her voice shaking. The clip showed Thunva and his friends placing a bet on her during the night she'd first come to see him at the bar. Lynn, let me explain, Thunva said, reaching for her as she turned to run. You despicable jerk. She slapped him across the face, hard enough that his head whipped to the side. Her best friend, who she'd trusted, had betrayed her by getting involved with the man she liked. And the man she liked? He'd only used her as a toy, a temporary distraction to help him forget his ex. Enough. She'd had enough of this one-sided love. Lynn, please, just listen to me, Thunva pleaded, his voice cracking. Fat, who had come over to see Thunva, heard the commotion and came upstairs. There he saw Thunva, crying, clinging to Lynn's legs. Fat, please take me away from here, Lynn choked out, her voice trembling and tearful, extending her hand toward him. Please don't take her, Thunva begged, his desperation shocking Fat, who had never seen his friend in such a state. When Thunva had broken up with Ploy, it had been rough, but this time was different. He was utterly devastated. The look of disappointment in Lynn's eyes pierced through Thunva's chest, filling him with an ache he couldn't bear. He feared that if he let her go this time, he might never see her again. Lynn pried his hands off her with all her strength, then ran out of the room. Thunva chased after her as she fled his house. The neighborhood mothers, who were returning home, heard the loud argument and came over to see what was happening. Lynn, wiping away her tears as she ran, didn't notice the car speeding toward her. Crash! Her body was thrown through the air before landing hard on the pavement. Pain shot through her spine, radiating through her whole body until everything went numb. She could hear the sounds of crying and panicked voices, but they began to fade as a high-pitched ringing filled her ears. The last image she saw before losing consciousness was Thunva's tear-streaked face and the word she had longed to hear for so long. I like you, Lynn. Why did he wait until now to say it? Chapter 11. I'm so sorry. Thunva sat staring at the emergency room doors, silently praying for the person inside to be safe. The patient is stable, the doctor informed them. Everyone let out a collective sigh of relief upon hearing that Lynn was out of danger, though she'd need to stay in the ICU for observation overnight. I'll stay with her, Auntie. Please go rest, Thunva offered, despite being covered in dried blood. Aunt Napa urged him to clean up, but he refused, choosing to stay by Lynn's side. Every night after finishing his set, Thunva returned to the hospital to watch over Lynn. For nearly 3 days, he sat by her side, waiting, hoping for her to wake up. Please, Lynn, wake up and forgive me, he whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to the back of her hand. Seeing a response, Thunva quickly called the doctor and phoned Lynn's mother. His heart leaped with joy, barely able to contain his emotions. Can you tell me your name? The doctor asked, shining a light in Lynn's eyes to check for any signs of brain trauma. Na Lynn Fongwanich, she replied. Can you recognize anyone here? Lynn looked around the room, identifying each person until her gaze landed on Thunva. She had once loved him deeply, but now even looking at him filled her with heartache. Thun, she said softly. Are you in pain? Thunva asked, his face filled with concern as he saw her begin to cry. Why did I ever have to love you? The words caught in his throat, and the room fell into a heavy silence, everyone feeling for both of them but unsure what to say. The doctor instructed Lynn to rest, as she had just regained consciousness and needed time to recover emotionally and physically. Ye, Thunva's older sister, followed him up to the hospital's rooftop. This is yours, she said, holding something out to him. How did you get this? I thought it was lost ages ago. Thunva took his old journal, the one he'd thought he'd lost back when he moved to his college dorm. You didn't lose it. You just left it in the wrong place. Fix what you messed up, little brother. As his sister, she knew exactly what he felt. She'd known for years that he'd had feelings for the girl next door. Why are you here, liar? Lynn spat as soon as he entered her room. Thunva didn't respond to her anger, instead placing his journal on the bedside table. I want you to read this, Lynn. She didn't even glance his way. He opened to the first page, which held a photo of them together from their school days. He'd first met Lynn at Aunt Ket's cafe, though she didn't remember. It wasn't until he moved into her neighborhood and they attended the same school that they grew closer. At first, he thought his feelings for Lynn were just the affection of an older brother toward a little sister. But when Fat told him that he also had feelings for her, jealousy flared up. He punched his best friend that day, and they hadn't been close since. Fear had kept him silent, fear that she'd only ever see him as the boy next door, and that her affection was nothing more than a childhood crush. When Lynn finally confessed her feelings, he was thrilled, but his insecurities surfaced. He worried about being left behind again, just as he had been with his ex, and wondered if he was good enough for her. After all, he was just a night singer without a stable job or a future he could confidently offer. Everything had been falling into place, only to collapse by his own doing. "Lynn, I love you. Please give me a chance." Lynn lay with her back to him, sobbing quietly. Did she still love him? Yes, she did. The feeling she had nurtured for years couldn't disappear overnight. But after everything that had happened, facing him would never feel the same. "You don't have to believe my words, Lynn. Just watch my actions." Chapter 12. Since that day, Thunva had followed Lynn around like a shadow. No matter how many times she ignored him or pushed him away, he remained persistent, refusing to give up. His daily routines gradually changed. He always found ways to stay in her line of sight, whether by washing her car, watering her plants, practicing his singing near her window, keeping her mother company while watching TV, or even inviting himself over for meals without a hint of hesitation. Except for his hours at the bar and sleeping, Thunva's time seemed to revolve entirely around her home. Today, he woke up early to help Nappa prepare breakfast. Although cooking was far from his strong suit, he wanted to make something for Lynn, deciding to start with a simple breakfast. But Lynn had a meeting with a client and after showering, left in a hurry, skipping breakfast. "Give it to me. Let me drive," Thunva said, taking her car keys before getting into the driver's seat. Though Lynn was irritated, she got in without further argument, worried she'd be late. As they entered Bunny Cafe for her meeting, they unexpectedly ran into someone familiar. "Long time no see, Lynn," Fern greeted her with a smirk. Lynn merely glanced at her, uninterested in engaging, which clearly displeased Fern. "Oh, are you two together now? Congrats. Enjoy my leftovers," Fern sneered. Lynn stopped in her tracks, turning around to face her, then delivered a resounding slap across Fern's face. Being slapped in front of the bustling cafe, Fern's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. She raised her hand, ready to retaliate. "Don't mess with Lynn," Thunva warned, gripping her arm tightly. "We're not together," Lynn said calmly. "And don't assume everyone is as low as you are." She turned away, opened the cafe door, and entered without sparing Fern another glance. Fern stood outside, seething, but with no recourse, eventually walked away on her own. Chapter 13. After finishing her meeting with the client, Lynn stayed at a table in the back of the cafe, just as she used to, though this time, Thunva waited at a table near the front, keeping an eye on her. "Still not over him?" Fat set down a piece of cake she'd ordered and sat across from her uninvited. "Let's not talk about him," Lynn replied. "If you still care, then read this," Fat said, handing Thunva's journal back to her. If he hadn't seen his old friend nearly broken with grief over Lynn, he might not have done this favor for him. After a moment's hesitation, Lynn took the journal and began to read. It contained entries and photos marking moments from when she and Thunva first met, each picture accompanied by a short caption. Lynn slowly turned through the pages until she reached the last one. It was a photo from Thunva's graduation ceremony, showing him and Lynn together. She held a glass jar full of paper stars, smiling brightly, though her face showed a mix of excitement and shyness. She remembered folding each paper star as a gift, making a wish that Thunva would like her in return. According to a Japanese belief, if one folds 1,000 paper stars and makes a wish, that wish will come true. "Lynn made a wish on 1,000 stars that you'd like her," she had told him back then, handing him the jar full of her silent hopes. Reading the caption beneath the photo, Lynn couldn't stop the tears from falling. "One star would have been enough," Thunva had written in his handwriting, accompanied by a smiling emoji and 2 hearts intertwined. "I've always liked you, Lynn." Thunva took a seat across from her, his gaze steady. "Have you really liked me all this time?" Lynn's voice shook, unable to believe that her decade-long dream had come true. "I've never stopped. But there's something I need to ask," Lynn said, as Thunva took her hand gently. "I'm ready to answer whatever you want to know." He admitted he was wrong about the bet. It was a reckless move to one-up Seth, blurted out in the heat of the moment with too much to drink. As for Fern, that was a one-night stand that had only ever happened once. On the day Lynn saw them, Fern had come into his room unexpectedly, and things had unfolded as Lynn had witnessed. "Will you be with me?" Lynn didn't answer but instead pulled him close by his collar and kissed him. Although stunned at first, he quickly responded, matching her fervor. Fat, standing at the cafe counter, rubbed his forehead in exasperation. No concern for my other customers, not even a little. Subscribe now for more interesting stories.